it's really wonderful to be here. Thanks so much to two of you for coming. My name is Annie Corbin, and I'm the enrollment coordinator here at Trillium Waldorf School. And before becoming enrollment coordinator, I have been involved in the community for, I guess, 10 years, which is pretty amazing to me. A decade goes by really quickly. So I started by taking the parent-child program with my son, Quincy. And so he's now going to grade 6. And I have a daughter going to grade 4. And so I know the community really from both the parent standpoint and also as enrollment coordinator. So it's really wonderful to be part of the inside of the school. And yeah, we can take it away. So we have 2 panelists here today. Maya Lindsley is our alum. Can you introduce yourself, Maya?
Sure. So I am a graduate of Trillium. I graduated in 2016 after going to the school for 11 and a half years, to be exact. Since then, I've stayed involved through various volunteering at different events and different things that happen at the school. And right now I'm working as an alumni development coordinator for the school. So I'm setting up communications and outreach initiatives to alumni of the school. And it's my full-time job for now. But moving forward after the summer, it'll be a volunteer commitment that I'll carry forward. Yeah, I love Trillium.
Thanks, Maya. That's great. And John Wright, our alumni parent, has had many children go through. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Annie. Our family has been involved in the Trillium Waldorf School for 23 years now. We came to the school about a year after it started. I've had 5 children go through Trillium Waldorf School. Our youngest child, Zina, she just graduated from grade 8. So we officially have no more children in the school, but continue to be involved. I've served on the board. I'm serving on the board currently and have served on the board one time before that. Our family, again, very involved in the school. I've run a basketball program, an after-school basketball program for about 10 years. The Waldorf movement has several plays that teachers and parents sometimes put on. I've been involved in the Shepherd's play for about 15 years and started in that early and took a few breaks here and there. So I'm, thrilled to have been associated with this school.
That's so great. That must feel pretty crazy to you to have your last child have graduated. What a huge milestone.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Awesome. Well, Maya, if you feel good about it, I think we'll start with you as the alum. So I first want to ask you what you felt you most appreciated about Trillium while you were here, and also how your perspective on that has changed since you've had a little distance, and interesting for you to be back involved again now. So I'm just curious about that.
There were a lot of things that I loved about it while I was going there, but to single out one, I would say just the freedom and the support that I had to pursue what I wanted to pursue, to discover myself, to nurture my passions that I was discovering as I was growing up. And now that I've had a few years away, I can see that was probably one of the biggest contributing factors to the self-confidence that Trillium gave me. Because when I left Trillium, I knew who I was, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go next. And that feeling has persisted and really empowered me as I'm stepping into the adult world.
Amazing. Wow. And I'm curious, so when you were attending Trillium, did you know that was the best part of it at the time, even as that young self of yours, that you really felt like you could be yourself there? Or is that more like in reflection?
It's hard to say. Maybe not so much while I was there. I mean, I was just kind of going with the flow, but I think to a certain extent I probably did realize it. I was kind of like a lot more shy and withdrawn when I was younger, and I like could tell that there was a difference between where I was at school grade to express myself and yell and get in trouble, and elsewhere where I was like I felt a lot more timid. So I part of me probably knew it.
Awesome. It's so great. And I'm sure that has served you in the years since. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I know that you've attended other schools after Trillium, given it only goes up to grade 8. And I'm just curious, to the best of your knowledge, what differentiates Waldorf education and Trillium from other schools?
Oh, so much. I could rant about this forever. Oh my gosh. So I went to a public high school after I graduated grade 8. I went there for 4 years. Um, oh man. Yeah, the difference is quite staggering. I would say, first of all, there's like a difference in how you feel being at the school, because at a Waldorf school, you really feel like you're being met where you are, you know, like they see who you are, they want you to be that person. They want you to like they want you to build who you are and grow into yourself, but also to expand your mind, see new things, think new ways. Whereas like when you're in a public school, it's like, okay, how do I beat the system? Like I need to learn how to do school, not how to think, how to learn, but like how to get the right grades and the right classes at the right times so that you know you can have the right credits to graduate and then get into the right program at university. And you have to plan this like years in advance, so that's really all you're focusing on. And this the sort of like the turnover rate of like the semester system and the short classes with different teachers is just so depersonalized that you kind of just feel like you're being churned through a system instead of having an experience.
Hmm.
To put it briefly, I could go on for hours, but I'll just cut myself off there.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, that's clear. And so it sounds like you've like, a million really wonderful things to say about Trillium, which is so great. And I'm curious, if there was something you could change about Trillium for the better, what do you think it would be if you had to choose something?
I would make it more accessible, hands down. It's already like as accessible as it can be, you know, but I wish that it was more accessible. I wish there was more like support and just like a better societal situation for Waldorf schools to thrive, because unfortunately, the inaccessibility of expensive education makes it very whitewashed, and that's not what we want for a society and not what we want for the school. And it just sucks when you're stuck in that position. So accessibility.
Yeah, here, absolutely. And so I'm curious, what do you think families would find most surprising about the school when they come in? Like, what's something, a way that people might view Waldorf education and maybe Trillium in particular that's different once you're in the inside?
Okay, I'm gonna play off a stereotype and say that the most surprising thing might be how rigorous and advanced the academics actually are. Because, people are like, oh, Waldorf school, hippie school, you learn how to do art and make handwork stuff. Like you do, but you also learn how to do math. Like it's very challenging a lot of the time. I remember like the intellectual challenge that I experienced going to school for that 8 years is the complete lack of intellectual stimulation that I got at high school is so different. And a lot of the stereotypes about Waldorf wouldn't lead people to see it that way, but it definitely is.
Wow. And so do you feel that intellectual stimulation and that rigorous academic life that you had in those 8 years, do you feel like it really prepared you for your, like you went on to post-secondary, I believe? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It more than prepared me, and it also taught me how to love learning, which I think is the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting that it could be so rigorously academic and still create a love of learning. I'm curious, Do you think that, was there anything specifically about, I don't know, the way the classroom was managed, like the, story life, the artistic components? I don't know. Is there anything that stood out to you as a big part of what created the love of learning, even though it was so difficult? I don't know if that's a clear question.
No, yeah, I think so. I think mostly because learning in a Waldorf classroom is approached in an experiential, like hands-on type of way. And so everything you learn is connected to everything else you learn. And, if you don't get it the first time, there's 5 other ways that they're going to teach it to you for you to get it. And it's so all interconnected that you don't even realize that this is happening to you, that these are the tactics that they're taking. You just have an experience that's like all around you. And so you have to be invested in it because you are immersed in it. Whereas just like having facts, dished out, like these are the facts you need to memorize, is more of a, I'm looking at the experience, not I'm living the experience. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. That's great. So I'm curious what advice you might give to a student who's just entering Trillium.
That would depend on the age of the student. But I mean, I guess just to be open to everything, because it will shock you. There's no way to prepare for it if you don't already have an understanding or a window into it, because it's just so totally different from whatever else you would have been experiencing at a different school. And the best thing you can do is just roll with it. Don't question anything until you get used to it, then question things. Think for yourself.
That's great. Awesome. Cool. And Maya, what do you think? You spoke to us a little bit already, but I'm going to ask you again. How do you feel your time at Trillium really contributed to the person you are today? So you spoke about the self-confidence. I'm curious, is there anything else that you really feel, fostered something in you that you feel is a huge part of who you are now?
The confidence is a big one. I feel like my confidence propels me through a lot of my achievements, and I credit that largely to Trillium. Also, I guess just the sense that learning and life are the same things, and that pursuing what you feel is right is more important than pursuing any sort of like preset formula or trajectory that you see reflected in other places. I'm trying to think of another way to word that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm the type of person that I know what I want to do and I just do it, because why wouldn't I? I have the tools. There's nothing to lose. I'm like, I may as well. And ultimately, if you're following your heart and doing what you believe you're supposed to be doing and what you believe is right, then you put out a positive impact into the world. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really fascinating. I just listened to some stats on Waldorf graduates just this morning, and it sounds like there's out of Waldorf grads, a disproportionate number go into like helping sort of fields after. So there's this real sense of, often with Waldorf grads, they're apt to choose something that they like, makes them feel fulfilled and is bettering the world and helping people, over something that they feel like they should be doing, or over something that, might be, the benefit might be more monetary. So I thought that's really interesting. That's like totally aligned with the stats. It's cool. Thanks, Maya. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Over to you, John. All right. So I'm wondering for you, what brought you to this school originally? What drew you to Trillium?
Yeah, I think as parents, you look at these little people and you want to give them every opportunity that you can to be happy in life and to be successful. And so we really kind of were looking to see, what are the alternatives to public education? But we're the type of family where we did not want or didn't feel comfortable with enrolling our children in a traditional private school. That wasn't comfortable to us. We lived in the west side of Guelph. We became aware of this alternative private school meeting in a church that was a couple minutes away from our house. And so we started to do some research on Waldorf education. It happened that an open house came up, and so we went to the open house and decided just to talk to the people. So when we got there, we talked to some of the teachers and just had a very kind of calm feeling about it. And then they showed us the work that the students do, and we couldn't believe that students at young ages were producing such kind of beautiful work. Mm-hmm. And to Maya's point, math comes out of art, and it was just amazing. Our kids were all pre-kindergarten then, or in kindergarten age, and so we thought this is going to be great. We also really were drawn to the fact that one of the kindergarten teachers would say, let children be children, let children have a childhood. And our two oldest boys, they kind of had one gear, right? They were always on, and we had no clue how, especially our oldest, would be able to sit in a chair for hours in kindergarten. We just didn't see that. So the fact that Waldorf kindergarten, they spend a lot of time outside. They kind of, I think, trick them into sitting when they're chopping up vegetables for the soup and things like that. So really the way the teachers were interested in nurturing children, the way that they wanted children to have a childhood, but as Maya was saying, it's experiential, right? That's really what kind of drew us to Waldorf education originally.
Hmm. Oh, the right spot, the right time, it sounds like, hey? That's pretty amazing. And that was 23 years ago, is that right?
Yeah, so 24 years ago. Yeah,
wow.
That's right.
And so it sounds like what drew you in that day at the open house and learning a little bit more at that time, 23 years later, your fifth child just graduated. So I'm curious, the next question I was going to ask was, in what ways was the school what you expected, and in what ways was it not what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly practical. So I see this small group of people in a rented space in a church, limited resources. So I didn't personally have a lot of expectations early on. Mm-hmm. And, our children were in, just in kindergarten. So I really didn't have these huge expectations. But as I started to see the kids coming home from school and, would be able to kind of start reciting stories that they have been hearing and, wanted to kind of help make supper, I just, I saw what you might term as the fruits of this education. And so I began to expect that the kids would be cared for, and the kids would be nurtured by their teachers. I also, as they started to go through the grades, expected that I saw the work would challenge them, and that their teachers wouldn't really let them kind of not do the work that they were capable of, right? And so that you know, they were encouraged to be creative. They were also encouraged to make their work beautiful. And so that expectation came as we kind of experienced this. So the expectations, and maybe to tell a little story, it's a little bit of a sad story, but as our boys went into high school, because we have 3 boys at the start and then 2 girls. As our boys went into high school, each of them, their first projects, you know, they would make these beautiful projects, and then they would hand them in, and the teachers loved them, but their peers would just make fun of them. Like, what are you guys doing? And so, you know, they were prepared to go to high school. And sadly, I think just from a little bit of peer pressure, they still did good work, but it wasn't the beautiful work that I think they were capable of because of that Waldorf education.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it sounds like in high school they kind of learned how to like blend in a little bit, you know, not like knit their own, you know, binder case or something. But do you see, you know, now your kids some of them are adults now?
Yeah,
right?
4 of them are adults, exactly.
Right. And do you see though that, you know, love of like good work and work that you'd be proud of, and, you know, work that is beautiful, has that kind of come back in their adulthood, that they're, you know, put their all into things? Or what do you see that sort of benefited them that remains in their adulthood?
Yeah, and maybe to, you know, when you look at the impact that the school has had on them, you know, again, I'm kind of looking at this collectively and not individually on per kid. But when you look collectively at these people, Trillium really, what it gave them, and the Waldorf education gave them, was they learned how to care, and not just care about people, but care about the world that they live in, and that's really very obvious in general how they approach life. I've had several friends over the years kind of take me aside, and they're amazed at how comfortable my children are at engaging and interacting with adults. And I know they're adults now, but people that are my age. And I think that is directly related to, on a daily basis, their teachers would, you know, greet them and shake their hands and make eye contact and really model for them how to be present in kind of personal interactions. And so I think that's really a huge impact that I don't just see, but even kind of my friends see, kind of in how the children kind of interact and engage with the world.
It is remarkable, isn't it? Yeah, and I think with Waldorf education, the goal is really like, how is this child going to grow into an adult that is like well-rounded and happy and secure and able to go forth in the things that matter to them, and all of that, right? Rather than how could they be, you know, get to university at the youngest age, or those sorts of goals. It's really about like healthy, well-rounded, contributing adults in the end, right? And it sounds like, you know, you have a bunch of those of your own, and you're seeing that, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think, I think some people also may worry about the whole class teacher. So this teacher moving with the class through their, 8-year journey. no one should ever have a worry about that. I mean, that's critical in kind of the education, and that relationship. It allows the child at the beginning of each new academic year to not have to negotiate a new relationship with kind of this adult. So it makes it very easy for them to go from academic year to academic year and be secure in, and focused on that experience. And the teachers, I think, Annie, as you're saying, the teachers are I mean, they use Waldorf methodology and that pedagogy to kind of, they present that, but they're most concerned about kind of nurturing the spirit of this child and bringing out who they can become, right? I think that the focus is not on education as much as developing and helping this child develop into really well-rounded contributing community members.
Yeah, absolutely. Maya, I saw you like nodding away when John was speaking to the class teacher following you through. I wonder, is there something you wanted to add about that, about your experience of having a class teacher for 8 years?
Yeah, I just really agree with what John said about it. Honestly, by the end of my 8 years, my teacher was like a third parent to me, like hands down. And he still is. Like, we stay in contact, we catch up. When I'm around him, I feel like he's a family member. And like how lucky could I have possibly been? Like, everybody should have that in those years. It's so critical.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really neat to hear that personal perspective too. That's great. John, back to you. So maybe we're thinking more of Zina because she's the most recent child you had, and I'm curious, what would she say about the school, about her experience at the school, like in present day?
Yeah, as I thought about that question, and I'll speak as well from the perspective of the older kids, because Zina's just new out of there. All of them, as they were growing up, from time to time would complain about going to the school, but they to a person would not trade that kind of experience and that opportunity to go to another school. They at our family meals very regularly, Waldorf, experiences that they had in their education and kind of the results of that education, they're constantly coming into conversations. Could be, something that's kind of current event, and they will kind of reflect back on lessons that they've learned. And so now they just express gratitude for that opportunity. And I think, as you've heard from Maya as well, they realize that has really given them an advantage in abilities to kind of cope with some of the challenges that they face as young people in, a very turbulent world that we live in right now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's great. And so, yeah, I wonder how you describe the values of the school and the values of the families in the school community.
Yeah, I think as far as values go, one of the values that a few came to mind. One of the ones would be kind of determination. And I say that, and maybe Maya will reflect back on the form drawings in the early years where, they would spend hours doing these ellipses. And I had my second guy, he's had some fine motor stuff. So, Miss Como she would even sometimes send home and this will exercise, right? To, stay determined to, again, not do something that's perfect, but do something as best as you can. So I think determination is one of the things that I see the school and the families in the school. And when you look at the history of the school, again, we have, it's a not-for-profit venture, and it takes a lot of volunteer hours as well. And so I think that determination really has brought us through any challenges that we faced as a school.
Yeah, for sure. Can I put that question over to you, Maya? I don't mean to put you on the spot, although I am putting you a little bit on the spot. I'm curious what you see as the values of Trillium. Do you mind?
Determination for sure. Was this a pick one value or pick three values?
You can pick however many values you like.
However many values I like. Oh my. Determination. Compassion is a big one. Intuition. Intellect. Oh my gosh, I could just go on and on and on.
That's great.
Determination and compassion. Yeah, I think those are two really big ones.
Yeah, awesome.
I can add in as well. And I don't know how you would miss this if you just watch Maya. Enthusiasm. I mean, as an individual, personally, I love enthusiastic people, and my mom is super enthusiastic. The building can be burning down, and she's finding, she's still enthusiastic. And I think the community, and again, many of the students, they kind of have this love of life and love of learning, and they kind of approach that with enthusiasm. And I think they get that because of how freeing the education is, and how it allows them, again, to be and then become.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that. And I concur with everything both of you said. Absolutely. One thing.
Yeah, Nanny, maybe one other one that I was thinking of, and that's leadership. So being a business owner, and I don't want to always pile on some of the newer generations, but as we would go out and try to hire people, it was sometimes very challenging. And I understand, we too need to meet them where we are. And I think the study that you kind of were looking at and talking about earlier, right? I think kind of sometimes that leadership vacuum that we might see in some of the newer generations is disproportionately can be filled by kind of Waldorf grads. I think just the way they're nurtured and educated and given the tools, like self-confidence, it allows them to kind of lead out and show that they care.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I was just thinking too, the part of the question about the values of the families in the school community. I'm curious what you two think of this, but my experience is often that although there's pieces that unite the families, like there's inherent values in the families that the families hold in order to even seek out Trillium and all of that, coming into Trillium, I really thought kind of like Maya, you were talking about the the stereotype of like, oh, we're just going to learn a bunch of handcrafts and that's kind of it at the Waldorf school. I also thought like all the families are going to be making their own granola and kombucha, you know, and that's the way it's going to be. And I don't know if the two of you feel this way, but I'm quite delighted by the difference in the families that come, like, you know, that people don't live their lives all one way or another way, that lots of different people can find a home at Trillium, you know, for the education for their kids. And so I don't know, is that your experience, the two of you? That the family values can differ as well, like, and choices?
Go ahead, Maya.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think most Waldorf families are primarily united by the fact that they want to be a part of the community. And so like there's always those parents in your class that are, you know, they kind of just act like they're also your parents, not even in a bad way. It's just like, you know, we're all just one big extended family. And yeah, there's definitely an environment like that is not the type of it's not the type of environment that would cause everyone to be making their own granola. It's the type of environment that encourages difference. So there's definitely a lot of room for that.
They'll make granola if that's their thing, but they'll also like study Taekwondo or whatever else if that's their thing.
Exactly. I don't think I've ever seen my mom make her own granola, and I probably never will.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, I think when I reflect on that question as well, you know, when you are attending kind of parent meetings with the class teacher, at least to me, really, and probably being involved in some of the school leadership, what's really important is the children and kind of the opportunity to have this education. And so when you have diverse opinions and when you have diverse kind of approaches to life, I think the parents in a class really, you know, are non-judgmental and very, very supportive, because they want the class teacher to be able to really focus on giving what they can, you know, and giving everything they can to the nurturing of all the children. And I think that really unifies them to kind of look past or not judge kind of those differences.
Yeah, that's the experience that I have too. Thank you for so beautifully putting that. That's really clear. I had one last question for you, John. And again, I think you kind of probably answered it throughout all the rest of these questions, but I'm curious that, yeah, how being a part of the Trillium community for so long and having that Waldorf education influence on your family, like how has that supported your family life as a whole? So you spoke about your adult children bringing up at dinner. Yeah, and I'm curious, you know, I imagine it must have really infused your family life pretty thoroughly. Maybe
yeah,
not.
I think it's, I mean, I think it's really taught or kind of influenced the family in just wanting to be outside in nature together. And so we had some traditions where we would kind of go on, you know, a backcountry canoe trip, right? And you know that, you know, to especially once we got 5 kids, to kind of, and you have all young kids, to kind of take them out, you know, it wasn't an easy undertaking, but we really, you know, we really saw kind of the calmness at the end of the day when we picked up people, and you know, this emphasis on kind of being out in nature and respecting nature, you know, that kind of really influenced that tradition in the family, to the point now where we even have, you know, adult children saying, hey, when's the family canoe trip this year? You know, I want to make sure I book this time off. And we're talking they're in like mid-20s, some of them, right? So that whole wanting to be out has been a wonderful influence. I think, you know, simplicity and beauty, appreciating those things as well has kind of been an influential on kind of the family and how we approach things. And early on, I think it was really beneficial to hold the reins back on access to media, because we wouldn't have done that without the influence of the school. And whatever your attitudes are about media, our experience is that really helped the children be children, right? And so that we're really grateful for that influence as well.
Yeah, it sounds like the school kind of helped support the values that you probably had for your family anyway, but you got this outside support from the school and sort of influence, right? That helped you probably strengthen you carrying those. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And so I have one last question for the two of you. And that's, if the school were represented by a single person, what would the personality be like? If you could describe that personality in 3 words. It's a bit of a challenge, this one.
Would you like to go first, Maya, or do you want me to go?
I can go. I thought about this a bit beforehand. 3 words describe the person. They would be compassionate, intuitive, and humanistic.
How about you, John?
Yeah, I chose nurturing, enthusiastic, and open-minded. And I was going between open-minded and empathetic, but I chose open-minded. And I see a lot of those qualities in not only my children and other students, but the families. And I think we the pandemic has, within our family, there are various opinions and different opinions about how we should approach certain aspects of the pandemic. But the discussions have always been respectful, and for the most part, they will actually listen to one another, when they're making their points. I think that's really come from how they learn to interact with classmates, in the school. So those are the 3 that I chose.
Yeah, and it's an important point that you make, like in such divisive times, to have a group of people that can have differing views, of course, and still stay united around the school. And how largely that has happened through the pandemic is pretty incredible. And I think you're right, really speaks to back to that determination you spoke about, right? That we have a really determined, compassionate community. That's really awesome. Well, on the pandemic note too, I want to say that I feel like Trillium has done, I imagine that you'll both agree, that Trillium has done a really wonderful job at keeping like the essence of the school and of Waldorf education really alive. And that even with, having to have some new procedures and protocols in place last year, that the school really, like, it kept its essence, and like the vibe of the school felt the same. And so, this is sort of a bizarre medium to be giving parents this first taste of the school, but I really thank you both, because I think you portrayed some of that beautiful life that is so present in Trillium and that people in the community really talk about. So thanks so much for being awesome community members and so willing tonight to answer these questions.
Totally my pleasure.